You are listening to Committed, an ongoing conversation about marriage, intimacy, relationships, and sex. I'm a marriage and relationship coach dedicated to helping couples and individuals like you build stronger, more fulfilling relationships. I have a deep understanding of communication dynamics, conflict resolution, and intimacy. I guide clients through challenges with compassion and expertise. Welcome to another episode. I'm going to be doing a special episode for you all. And so we have to build this up, and I encourage you to get involved. I need your thoughts, stories, questions, feedback in order to drive these episodes. I'm excited to bring them to you because I can specifically address some of your issues on Saturdays in these episodes, which are largely unplanned. Also, if you leave a review on the podcast, I will personally mail you a free deck of cards. I made a game called Relate Connect, and it is for couples. I will caution you go deep in this card deck. This is not like a what's your favorite color, what's your favorite sex position relationship card deck. And I know because I have many wonderful card decks. But what I found before I created my own is that some of the card decks lacked depth. And I was finding with my husband that when we would go out to dinner, we would need to bring a bunch with us because we would whip through the questions a little bit quicker. And so I wanted to develop a card deck that would take us a longer period of time to answer each question. And so here we are. Here's the deck, completely free. I will mail you a card deck if you leave a review on the podcast, on YouTube specifically. I just started YouTube. I'm excited to see where it goes and how it grows. And so if you would like a free card deck, I will be choosing every Saturday one person to win a deck of my cards. Without further ado, let's get into it. Today, I want to talk to you about why intimacy can fail in your relationships. What prompted this is actually a TikTok video I posted that got quite a bit of traction, and it was all about why individuals in a relationship may be self-pleasuring rather than having intimacy with their partners. And sometimes, again, I forget that I can say sex here. I've been saying that this entire freaking podcast, I know, but it just baffles me because I have to go back and forth between not saying anything bad on TikTok and being able to say pretty much whatever words and verbiage I want to use on the podcast. So bear with me because I'm still trying to figure that part out. But I had a comment from someone that sparked my interest. What I want to do is I want to first go through my reasoning for why intimacy may fall to the wayside, partnered intimacy, and why partners might just opt to have sex with themselves, i.e. masturbation. There's a few reasons that really came straight to my mind when I thought about marriage and long-term relationship. And then what I asked is that my followers add to that. So here we go. The first one that I actually have on my list, and I took 3 and I turned it into 4 because I really wanted to add almost like a subcategory to one of them. So on my TikTok video, I had put down emotional connection being a difficulty in your relationship. When people in especially heterosexual relationships, but I believe also in same-sex relationships, when you are emotionally disconnected. For some, partnered sex might reestablish your connection, but certainly in heterosexual relationships, what I know about females is that we want to feel that the emotional connection is there, which then leads us to want more, meaning we may want to have intercourse or sex with our partner. Now, I had also written down here not feeling understood in the relationship, and I think that that is similar to not feeling an emotional connection in the long-term partnership or marriage. Why would we do something as vulnerable as sex, physical intimacy with our partners when we're not feeling emotionally connected to them? We don't feel like they understand us and they get us. Sex is quite possibly the most vulnerable thing that we can do with another human. We strip down, we're naked, and we are at our most vulnerable state. In order to feel pleasure, we have to be completely relaxed. And complete relaxation is the place where you are in the most vulnerable opportunity, essentially, to be hurt. And so to be able to go to that place with our partners, we often want to feel very connected to them in order to go there. Now, I would say if we're feeling small bits of disconnection, and it's not like a complete disconnection, meaning that you had a fight or something of that sort, having physical intercourse with our partners and physical intimacy with our partners, which encompasses so much more than intercourse and penetrative sex, is something that might bring us together more and solidify that disconnection that we had that was just a slight disconnection. But when we're talking about greater emotional distance, well, you might need to have a conversation or some kind of resolution to a conflict before engaging in that. And so that is one reason why one might choose to just masturbate and self-pleasure, right? I don't have to work any issues out with anybody. I understand myself. I get where I'm coming from. I like my thought process and it makes sense. I love me. I want to pleasure me. But when we're struggling in our relationships and we are disconnected, we don't really feel like often that we want to connect further and that we want to go that extra mile with our partners. So the next is not enough time. That's a pretty easy one for people to understand. It's like we're tired, especially if you have children, you work full time, or you take care of the children in your home, which is also a job. You're exhausted at the end of the day, especially a job that's doing manual labor, meaning any sort of manual labor, including childcare. Even if you are sitting at a desk all day, it can be very mentally taxing. And so if you have a very busy life, then it can be difficult to want to exert the extra energy. The reality is that sex is not always just a quick 5-minute deal, right? When we're connecting with our partners and we're sharing in that experience, and I often find in my practice that couples are sort of at odds a lot of the time with each other, where one person wants to have sex for a longer period of time. They want to really have the buildup. They want to have the foreplay and the touching and the kissing and slow making out. And they want a lead up to actual intercourse, which is typically where people go with sex, heterosexual couples. But this isn't always and doesn't always have to be the case, but it is often where people go. And so if you just don't have enough time, especially for the person who wants to spend a longer period of time having sex with each other, connecting that way, then you might be self-pleasuring if you really just don't feel like you have the bandwidth to do it on top of everything else that you are doing in your life already. And then the third was not feeling like your partner knows how to pleasure you. Now, this is a very difficult thing for women because we have definitely been conditioned to believe that our pleasure and our orgasms don't matter. And over time, we are backing ourselves out of that. We know that the clitoris is made for pleasure, which is absolutely wonderful. It has absolutely no other function. And that the number of nerve endings in the clitoris really allows us to know that there really is no other body part that is more sensitive in either gender. I was actually just listening to some research on this. That being said, if we don't feel like our partner knows how to touch us and how to make us feel good, and we've gone through it and it feels like a whole rigmarole where we've continued to bring it up or we've brought it up a couple of times and they're not getting it and they're not improving on their skills. A lot of times in oral, penetrative sex doesn't do it for women. Oral or any sort of foreplay where you are stimulating the clitoris before sex allows you to become aroused, and then you can really move into orgasm, and just overall enjoy sex more. If you don't feel confident that your partner knows how to engage in that with you, or is not supporting you in that effort for yourself when you are engaging together, sometimes it might feel like, what's the point of having sex with one another when I'm the one who knows how to touch myself? I get it. And so I'm just going to give that to me without the extra work of really not feeling great when we're having sex, because I'm not getting what my needs are met. I will just meet my own needs. And obviously that's such a shame, because you're missing out on an experience that you can have together. I do believe in you that you can get there. There is no course that we come across in our regular daily lives, right? You have to go seek out help. There's no course that tells us how to have sex with one another. There's plenty of courses and material out there telling us to not have sex with other people. And unfortunately, this is such a problem because we've been raised with this idea that sex is bad, you're going to get an STI, you're going to get pregnant, and so don't do it. And then you launch off into the world, into your adulthood, and in some cases, depending on what you believe, all right, well, you're an adult, be free, just make smart choices. And in other cases, it's all about baby making and all about reproduction. So the problem with this is that we are never taught how to give ourselves pleasure, give others pleasure, engage in pleasureful experiences with partners we may have, whether it is a short-term or long-term partner. And so masturbation is a great way to turn inward and say, I'm just going to give this pleasure to myself. But with that comes the disappointment in, a missed opportunity. We miss an opportunity to have greater and deeper connection in our long-term relationship. And I think with more than one person, you can get really creative about what you can do in your sex life. When it's you, it's really fun. And I condone masturbation. I truly believe self-pleasure is an absolutely wonderful practice. And I encourage everyone to do it because it does so much for you individually. It also does so much for your relationship. So to reverse this, I'm a huge fan of self-pleasure. The reason that I offered my video that I created the other day was really because many couples struggle with sex and their intimacy life, not just sex, but other aspects of their relationship that create connection between the two people. And if you're wondering, why is my sex life not working? I've sat in so many sessions where I've asked people who are struggling with sex, do you masturbate? And they say yes. Many of the individuals who are in distress report that they masturbate on a regular basis. And what's so sad about this oftentimes is that they've been with their partners for such a long time, and they're resorting because they don't have faith that they're going to be able to get the pleasure that they want and need in the long-term relationship or marriage. And so teaching sexual skills is something that I do in my practice. I love when couples feel really close to one another and get that experience, because I know what it feels like to have that experience, and it is just unmatched to any other for me. So I've always loved sex with my partners. I have enjoyed that in my marriage. And it's a really important part of connection for me. It's interesting because I personally sit on both sides of the coin. I sit on the side of the coin that says it's been sometimes frustrating if I've been trying to explain to someone how to give pleasure. It also is really important to me to have sex in a partnership. And I also can absolutely resonate really with all of this. If emotional disconnection is happening, I need that to be reestablished before I want to enter back into the physically sexual relationship. But at the same time, I need the sex in order for me to feel connected. And so I just want to reassure everybody out there that there are so many variations that are normal for people. We feel all of these things, right? Even the not enough time piece. Oh my goodness, that is something that continuously comes up in my relationship. And I'm sure many of you experience the same thing. We are so busy. When we hit the bed, one or both of us are so tired. And oftentimes we're going to stay up late because we know that this is good for our relationship right now. Not that like we have all this energy and all of this drive, but sometimes we just need to feel the comfort of our bodies on one another and just the feel of your skin and how close I feel to you when we're with each other. That is worth it, but time is a factor. Sometimes it's 1 a.m. before we're getting to this. And I'm sure many of you are laughing out there right now because I go to bed at like 12 or 1 a.m. typically on most nights. I've been trying to get to bed earlier though, I will say. But many people are like 9, 10 p.m. I don't know exactly how you do that because if my kids are going to bed at 8, that means that I have 1 or 2 hours and I just have way too much to do. There would just be no way. But props to you if you're getting to bed early. All right, so the last one is really about criticism and how criticism affects relationships. So someone had made a comment, and that's what I'm going to use as my Reddit Got a Good Story today. It was just a really small comment. Over time, like I said, please send me your stories. I will share them anonymously. I will never share your name. I'm not going to share your age, any details about you. You can leave details out that are identifying, whatever you would like. But a whole episode will be dedicated to you, and it will be one of my first, right? So it's going to be like, we're going to look back in a couple of years. We're going to say the worst lighting, the worst video, the worst audio quality. She was a horrible editor. And then you're going to be one of the originals. And I think that's so cool. So send your questions, comments, stories in. So someone had commented on my TikTok, and they essentially had said that the criticism that they experience in their relationship from their spouse really drives how much they want to have sex if they're going to just masturbate, self-pleasure solo instead of engaging in that, right? Now, it's a turnoff when they're being criticized. And so based on that, they might be having less sex. And that's absolutely something that comes up in relationship. And I just wanted to speak to that a little bit because I think a lot of people can resonate with it. There's a couple reasons that come to mind around why your partner might be criticizing you. And the first one is really that there's some kind of inequality happening in your household. Now, I don't know for this particular person, but if you have children, if you have a household, if you have careers, a lot of these things are just very common to have, right? You get older, people get married, they have kids, they buy a house, they get the dog, they do the thing. And then everything doesn't just work out perfectly. And there's a misconception that if you've found your person, that everything will be perfect. And obviously, on the contrary, that is not true. Long-term relationship is very hard. And so if this is something that you're going through right now, not just the criticism, but the lack of sex together or the self-pleasuring instead of having sex, you're not alone, because people really face this idea that, oh my gosh, what I thought to be true about relationship is actually different than I could have ever imagined. So one of the reasons why someone might be criticizing their partner, which then can result in less sex in the relationship, is this inequality piece, where one person feels like they are doing so much more than the other person. Maybe one person is working and one person is home, and the person at home doesn't want to be on 24/7, because a lot of times that's what will happen, and it will be a driver of conflict in relationship. Even if you both do work and say it's inside of the home, whatever it is, it often falls on the woman, and a man had left this comment, it often falls on the woman to complete all of the household duties. There actually was a study done that showed that when women entered back into the workforce and started bringing income into the home again, that they were doing more of the household chores and the housework than they actually were before when they were staying at home with the children. So that is very concerning, obviously, right? Because we don't want that to be the case. When women go back out into the workforce and they are taking on financial responsibility for the home, that means that more of the household chores should be split. And if you're both working full time, then you might want to split them 50-50. Unless, for example, you're someone like me and you just love to vacuum. Vacuuming is my thing. And so I don't expect my husband to do that. I don't necessarily want him to do that. I don't think I would be mad, but I just have never relied on him for that, and it just doesn't bother me. It's something that relaxes me. It's sort of like one of my videos that I made the other day where I showed some incense that I was burning and my kombucha that I was drinking as I was making dinner. I was just feeling so nice and so relaxed and so great. Vacuuming also strangely does it for me. But if you are in a household where you feel like you're taking on most of that responsibility, the mental load is a term that's used a lot to kind of describe what the person who is responsible for most of the appointments, the grocery shopping, the cooking, the cleaning might feel like, oh my gosh, I have to keep up with all of these things. Like it's a field trip form that I need to fill out, and then I need to fill it out. I need to get the pen out of the drawer. I need to put it in the folder on top of the million other things that I have on my list to do, like the load of laundry that's been sitting there for a week, or I really need to wash the sheets, or I have something due at midnight for work for the client tomorrow. So if there's inequality here, that is one reason I can imagine that couples might struggle with one person criticizing the other, because you're crying out for help and you're crying out for attention. It is very vulnerable to sit down with your partner and say, hey, I'm struggling with getting all of these things done. And frankly, I'm angry because I don't believe that it's my full responsibility to do them all single-handedly. I need to divide and conquer. I need you to start picking up the slack, doing some things that I'm not doing. Maybe you're responsible for cleaning the bathrooms and I'm responsible for cleaning the dishes after dinner. Whatever it is, that's a tough discussion. And I know it's tough for a lot of people. And the reason why is because many partners don't react, or they react instead of respond. They don't respond in a helpful way to the relationship when the other partner is asking for something, because sometimes, and we could go really deep with this, but we don't want to be seen as a bad person. We might not want to pick up some of the slack. That could be a reason why people start complaining about that kind of stuff. I don't want to do more. I'm tired from work. And so it's like, well, isn't your partner also tired from work? And so sometimes over time, and for some people, it can escalate quickly. And so I want to kind of take that into consideration as well. But over time, it's like, all right, I'm fucking tired too. I don't want to clean the toilets. I have no desire, but we're having these people over on Saturday, or we committed to go to church on Sunday and I won't have time because after that we have this thing to go to and this other thing to do. And I didn't do this thing for the house and Susie's got a homework assignment. There's so many things. Most of us would love to just plop our butts on the couch at the end of the day. But if one partner gets to do that more than the other, then we can get a little bit critical or a lot critical. I would love to be able to just do that and not worry about any of this other stuff, but it's still here. And so it becomes a criticism because we are responded to poorly when we try to be vulnerable. And I'm saying this could be absolutely the opposite way, where the man is asking for more help and assistance with things around the house, let's say, or with the family, or whatever. You can insert whatever it is, but I'm using household chores and household work and mental load as the example because that's the most common one that comes up. And I feel like 85% positive that might be what this person is talking about. The other thing that might be underlying the criticism is codependency. I will say that codependency doesn't necessarily need to be completely separate from inequality in the household, because I do think that those two things go together. But really what I'm talking about here is I am trying to fit you into a certain mold to make myself feel comfortable. And codependency can come from feeling, maybe really out of control when you were a child, or at least sometime in your young adulthood. And so you have this learned behavior of trying to be okay, essentially. And it's very similar to alcoholism, and some people call it more deadly than substance use issues, because it is a learned behavior that is very much ingrained into us and becomes who we are as people. And we need to back ourselves out of that so that we can really be our authentic self. When codependency takes over, though, it's really seeking to control the other elements of our life, including the people in our life, in order to feel comfortable with ourselves. And so if we are constantly criticizing in an effort to really avoid the fear that we feel inside of our bodies, if this doesn't happen the way that I need it to happen right now, then something bad is going to happen, perhaps. Or I won't be okay for some reason. And so that's a really dumbed down definition of it. I really reduced that down. But I would wonder if this desire to have control and to criticize is really linked to some type of codependency and codependent nature of your spouse. So, of course, we can see how one person is controlling, the other person feels criticized, nagged, and as a result, you're not wanting to have as much sex with one another. So thanks for tuning into this episode. I'm excited to do more of these on Saturdays. You need to email me or find me on Reddit. It's Marriage and Relations is my handle on Reddit. Leave me a comment on YouTube. Leave me a review. My podcast will still be posted to Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so you can also review us there. And I'll see you on Tuesday for our next episode. Thanks so much for tuning into the podcast. If you're new to our community, welcome. We really want our podcast to grow, so please like, follow, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review with your feedback on how we can make your experience most catered to you. As I work with my private clients continuously, this podcast is a great way for me to help more of you. Please reach out if you have